To defeat an enemy, you must know them.
This is Tatooine Sons, the only fan podcast to name a canon Star Wars creature and to be endorsed by the writer-director of The Last Jedi, Rian Johnson.
He's a good director.
He is a good dude with that. And it's congratulations to both of you. First day of school, last first day of college.
Yeah.
Thank you. Sam,
I'm ready to be done.
Senior year is going to be easier than
we hope. We hope.
I think so. And you're starting senior year of high school, and you're doing some college class today and everything else.
Yippers.
So that'll be fun. And we've got a huge announcement.
We do.
About Kingdom Come that'll tie into this series. Today's episode is all about the artist, Alex Ross. So we're going to talk about what you can't see.
Right.
The whole time.
We'll do our best.
We're gonna be very descriptive in our language and his talks, but we've got a huge announcement regarding this series. It's going to change how we release the final episode. We'll talk about that next after this little tease thing from our friends over at the Christian Nerd HQ. This is Tatooine Sons.
We are the Reverend and the Reprobate, just two best buds interviewing people we have no business talking to. I'm Lucas Pinkard.
I'm Dan Gibson. These aren't tears on my face.
Every Thursday, we interview somebody else from our favorite fandoms and yours. You can check those interviews out on the Christian Nerd HQ network. You can find us on YouTube at RevRep Podcast at ReverendRep.com. And if you can't remember our name, just go to BaconOffice.com. It's way easier to find. New episodes every Thursday. Thank you guys for supporting Christian Nerd HQ, and check out The Reverend and the Reprobate.
It's true. All of it.
What is the name of the porg on the Millennium Falcon?
Force is strong in my family.
What do you think his name is? It's a big moment.
I am a Jedi, like my father before me.
Maybe Turbis?
Do or do not. There is no try.
Turbis? Pablo, if you're listening to this live stream, that porg's name is now Turbis. It's a good Star Wars name.
We're not done yet.
These guys recorded an awesome podcast called Tatooine Sons. Everybody listen to that.
It wasn't number one movie of the weekend. It didn't do super great, though.
Nothing really did great.
Nothing.
That's true.
It was not a big movie weekend, but Blue Beetle was number one. What did you think about Blue Beetle real quick before we get into it? Blue Beetle's not part of the Kingdom Come world.
No.
I don't remember him being in there.
Maybe even Ted
Was he even
Kord,
existing at that point? Did
well,
he
like
exist?
Blue Beetles were, but
Okay.
nothing Jaime.
Oh,
was,
really?
So
Okay.
That's an interesting. They should tie him in. There's going to be some new Kingdom Come stuff.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
We'll talk about that some in a little bit. But anyway, yeah. So what'd you think about Kingdom Come or Blue Beetle? The movie
I thought it was
Blue Beetle.
great. I really enjoyed it. It was a ton of fun. Reminded me of some of the beginning of the MCU type of movies. It was a ton of fun.
Good deal.
Great visual effects, and humor was good too. So
Awesome. Sam?
Yeah, I got to echo that. I thought it was exactly what I wanted it to be. It wasn't anything crazy profound or anything like that, but it was a ton of fun. It felt like those original MCU kind of origin stories, like Shang-Chi in a way. It was really good. I hope it gets some legs in the box office.
Yeah.
It deserves some love.
Absolutely. I totally enjoyed it. Recommend you guys go see it. Well worth the price of admission. But
Nice.
that's
Go
not
see it
what we're-
Sunday.
Go see it.
It's cheap that day.
There's a big
National
thing?
Cinema Day, so
Are they
every
doing
cinema
that?
chain is having $4 tickets.
There you
Yeah,
go.
go see it.
There you
Go see it that
Any
day.
format. So if you can go see it in
Ooh.
IMAX, go ahead.
There
Go
we
see
are.
it in IMAX. It's
See,
good.
not only is this entertaining, but it's informational and
Of course.
educational. It helps you with your life.
I don't know
So,
about educational.
you never know. Well, welcome to Tatooine Sons, a pop culture podcast. We believe that pop culture is the mythology of this generation, that there is a story. It is written on our souls, and that these myths speak to that story. And that is why we are in the midst of an 8-episode series looking at the iconic DC Comics graphic novel Kingdom Come. And this week's episode is, as I mentioned in the teaser as we opened, it's about Alex Ross, the amazing, iconic, paradigm shifting artist.
Yeah.
And I think everything that I said there is not an exaggeration.
Not at all.
No, I don't think so.
He's fantastic. Can't wait to talk about that with it. I love that we get to do this. It was, completely a side track here, but we talk about mythology and all this. I was having a conversation earlier this afternoon for work because we're recording Monday evening, right? So you're listening to this Tuesday potentially if you listen to, and thank you. for listening.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. I know we say it every episode, but we really do mean it. For all of you that listen, especially those of you that listen the morning or the day that it releases, those are our special Tuesday downloaders.
Yeah, those people.
Well, no, it's actually
That's really cool.
It's a big deal that you make the effort to listen on Tuesday when this comes out, because for all of the stuff we don't really talk about on this show about algorithms and all of that kind of stuff, but when it comes to what tells podcast directories and apps what to promote to people, the people that listen on Tuesday have the most impact outside of ratings and reviews. And so if you're a listener, you're a regular listener on this and you listen on Tuesdays, we want you to know how much we appreciate you doing that, because it makes a huge impact on that. First day listens are huge for this. So thank you for doing that. But anyway, we're recording Monday night.
Right.
Right. And I was having a conversation with a gentleman who literally worked as one of the executives for Walt Disney Company in the studios and helped with franchise management. He was on this task force that included a couple guys. They're both their first names were Bob. Bob Iger. You guys heard of him?
Yeah, that sounds familiar.
And Bob Chapek.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I might have heard
he was on a task force with those guys talking about how to move into franchises. And he worked with like the idea of purchasing Lucasfilm and worked with them on Marvel and Pixar and all of these franchises, helped them relaunch the Tron franchise and all of that kind of stuff with it. And we were talking, he was after we had our regular conversation, he was talking about we ended up talking about Tatooine Sons because he saw the Star Wars stuff in the room and we were talking.
Good conversation starter.
So we were having a conversation about it and we were talking about how these franchises, right, these stories, and we were using Marvel as a good example, allow me as a father and you guys as sons the opportunity to have really important conversations about life through the lens of this. And I love being able to do that. We were specifically having a conversation about Falcon and Winter Soldier and the conversations that we had about that, regarding racism, regarding nationalism, regarding refugee crises, all of that. And it was a super fun conversation. I love the fact that we get to do that. And and he was really, we've texted like 3-4 times since then about the podcast, and he like watched the Turbis video and all of that stuff. So it was really cool. But let's talk enough talking about what we are not talking about, and
we're way
enough
off track.
Talking about what we're going to talk about. Let's talk about what we're going to talk about. Did I do it right today?
I have no clue. That was a lot of talk.
It's got to be your bowl. Okay. We got one more quick announcement though.
Oh.
We are going to have a shift.
Maybe forgot about that, yeah.
So episode 8 of this 8-episode series, we've been teasing, and if you're following us on Twitter and social media, you may have seen the little teaser video when we launched this podcast series, and it mentions that the 8th episode was going to be called The Interview. And we haven't talked about who we're interviewing. Let's announce who we're interviewing.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
I mean, he's got a little bit to do with this story.
A little. Yeah.
Maybe a lot to do with this story.
Yeah.
So there were lots of people that I was reaching out to, trying to get to have a conversation about
basically anybody in the comic industry.
I was reaching a lot of comic book people to try to have a conversation. Wasn't sure who we were going to get. We had some good interest from different people, and we had some people that we were lining up. And I had sent one of those, let's just throw the Hail Mary dream emails and see if we could get a certain person on here to talk about Kingdom Come. And honestly, never thought twice about that email until last week when I get a reply. I wake up and there it is. And he's like, I'd love to come on your show and talk about it. But I'm in the middle of finishing up some big projects. And so when those projects are finished, it's going to take us about another 8 weeks. And of course, we're already in week 4 now. He said, but it's going to take me about another 8 weeks to finish these projects. If we can do it after those, I'd love to talk about Kingdom Come with you. And since it's who he is,
we said absolutely.
I said we'll delay the final episode of this series until
little fall hiatus.
We'll take a break. We'll start talking some Ahsoka. We'll start our Ahsoka series, which we'll talk about on the later episode that comes today. By the way, we have a special episode coming out later today.
We do.
When the review embargo lifts, we have to wait for that. So you can't get it now. You have to get it later. So that's why it's a special episode. But I think it's noon Eastern.
Okay.
The embargo will lift, and we're going to have a special non-spoiler reaction episode to the first 2 episodes of Ahsoka, which we were privileged to have received screeners for. We're going to talk about that, so we're going to do that. But anyway, we're going to talk about the Ahsoka series, and in the middle of that, we're going to get another episode in our Kingdom Come series because we haven't talked about who it is yet.
No, you've teased it quite a bit.
I have teased it well.
It is Joss Whedon, right?
I don't think so.
Huh?
It is the writer of Kingdom Come, DC's Kingdom Come writer, Mark friggin' Wade. Is going to be the guest. BB Nate's going to interview Mark Wade about DC's Kingdom Come. How the freaking world did this happen?
No pressure.
How do you feel about that, BB Nate?
It's nerve-wracking for sure because he's written a lot of amazing series and consistently writes amazing.
What's he writing right now?
Right now, he's on Batman, Superman, World's Finest.
Okay,
which I
what
just
else?
got lost track of, but I want to read the rest of it. And then Superman, The Last Days of Lex Luthor.
You're reading
which
that.
has been
Yeah, I
great.
know
The
you've been
first
reading
issue
that
was
one.
really good, and I can't wait for the next 2, which it's just a 3-part.
He's writing something else right now, too, isn't he?
He is?
Yeah, he's writing a follow-up series to Kingdom Come.
No, not quite. It is an issue in World's Finest.
Oh, okay.
It's going to be the next issue of World's, or maybe a couple issues away from World's Finest. But they just
maybe
announced
we
it
can
for
get
this
Mr. Wade to talk a little bit about
That'd be
that,
great,
too. So I hope you're okay with us taking a little break in the DC's Kingdom Come series before that last episode. So we'll talk a lot about that. All right, enough talking about what we're going to talk about. Let's talk about what we're talking about. I got it right that time.
Yes, for real.
All right.
Only 10 minutes in.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about the other half of Kingdom Come's amazing
creative team.
dynamic duo.
Yes, good one.
That's Batman reference right there.
Oh, it was good. Yeah, I
Did
totally
you hear who might be
recognize
playing
it.
Batman in Brave and the Bold?
That's not true.
It's been a rumor.
You want to know how the rumor came?
Okay.
A reputable DC kind of spoiler site, news site, literally just tweeted a picture of John Krasinski.
Okay.
That's all they did.
And so they just ran with it?
They just tweeted a picture of John Krasinski, and a bunch of the clickbait sites started creating articles saying that there's a rumor that he's going to be portraying Batman in Batman Brave and the Bold. There is no substance to that whatsoever.
I wouldn't mind it.
I know.
You do a
Okay.
Good job.
All right. Let's talk about Alex Ross because he deserves his whole an entire episode.
He does
for himself, even though we were 10 minutes into this episode and we haven't talked about him yet. All right. Let's talk about a little bit of who he is. Kind of give me some thoughts. You know, he's kind of grew up in Texas as a comic book. Did you guys see the? I don't know, Nathan. You and I talked about that. Have you seen it too? The artwork that he tweeted out last week. Tell a little bit about
the one that he drew as a kid at like what
7?
age? Yeah, like 7 or 9 or something like that. And then
as a picture of Superman kind of descending with one knee up and that kind of thing.
Right, and then the picture of him doing that, basically that same picture now with
from a recent
art.
thing that he did. He grew up a comic book nerd and drawing comic book characters as a little kid, which I absolutely love that. Studied art at the American Academy of Art in Chicago, but his focus while he was there, I think, is really interesting because it was about realism. With that, which I think that's interesting that he studied that at the university level, because when you think about, talk about that when it comes to like Kingdom Come and his other art, isn't that kind of what he's known for?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's a much more realistic style than what you'll see in most comics, but it also is. It almost feels like an old photograph, right? From that old time period. And I think it's a cool approach that you can tell it's still art. Like it looks like it belongs in an art gallery, but it's very realistic. And we'll talk about what that can do in a story later. But he has a style that is pretty unique to him that he honed well.
Yeah, absolutely. And his art is museum quality and everything. And I think that's one of the things that when I think of Alex Ross, my mind goes to art that is just, I mean, I love so much comic book art. Right. But when Alex Ross started drawing comics and regularly, he started with the Marvels series with Marvel Comics. That's kind of one of the first things that he really worked on, and then before he started working on Kingdom Come. But when I think about Alex Ross, I think of someone that transformed the way comics
definitely
are drawn with it. Talk a little bit, Nate, about some of the, the late 80s, early 90s art in comics and the way that it was being drawn at that time.
It was kind of super like over the top in some ways. There was a lot to it. It was just a lot on
very
every page.
Exaggerated, lots of muscles on people.
Everything about it just was dialed up to an 11, and so it kind of went away from that normal simplistic art that we used to have back in the 60s and 70s and started to move to this kind of shocking,
sensationalized
basically look. Yeah, it was just every issue just had so much to the page where sometimes it can be hard to read some of those series because there's just so much on each page.
Well, but that's still the case with DC's Kingdom Come. I mean, you can't, every single panel, every single page is jammed with so much in it.
Right.
But it's packaged in a way that's easy to digest almost. Sometimes with those with those comics from the 80s and 90s, it can kind of feel like they threw up on the page.
Right.
And it's a lot to take in. Not saying it's bad, it's its own style. Some of it's objectively better than others, but it is a lot of information that it's cluttered sometimes, and it can be tough to decipher what you're looking at.
Thankfully, we've kind of started to move away from that, but that was a suffering. Frank Miller suffered from that a little bit in Dark Knight Strikes Again, which was the sequel to Dark Knight Returns, which is regardless considered to be pretty bad, which
really
it is pretty bad. But there were times when there's just so much on each page that it was hard for me to read. I've read that series twice, and I still don't think I'm able to fully get through it in one sitting because it's just so difficult to read because the art is just that 80s, 90s, very gray, kind of just over-exaggerated art that you see in that time period, and it's just thrown up onto the page, and you're just so confused as to what's going on. And the 90s suffered from that a lot, but he definitely helped try and change that.
Yeah, I think that his approach towards making talk a little bit about that, Nate, because I'm curious from someone who has read exponentially more comics than than Sam and I have with this. How does you talk about, what was the Frank Miller series you were talking about?
Dark Knight Strikes Again.
Dark Knight Strikes Again. How you struggle with understanding the story and following the story because of the art. Walk us through, and for those that listen that maybe aren't big comic book people that are listening right now, walk us through why and how the art in a comic book is part of the storytelling experience and why it's so important to get it right.
It's important because a lot of times, and I've said this a lot, and comics are in some ways a better form of understanding what a story is than a regular novel could ever dream of.
I would agree with that.
Because when you're reading a regular, say a sci-fi novel, like reading Lord of the Rings or Dune or something like that.
Some Star Wars books.
Yeah, some Star Wars books too. I mean, take Thrawn, for example. I read that. It is your ability to be able to understand and kind of picture in your head what's going on is limited to what you personally know. And it's difficult for your imagination to kind of figure out these specific times, like what specific places look like. Now, we've had movies and these things from creatives be able to tell us what they think this should look like. And that helps us now be able to understand what it should look like more because we understand that now and we can look at that. But when it comes to comics, you have this art following this story. And when you look at this art and everything, you're able to fully engross yourself in the story because you're seeing these locations. You're seeing what's going on, the situation. Sometimes it can be absolutely insane. And if you were reading it in a normal novel, you'd be like, I can't imagine this. Like the new Daredevil series. I don't know how spoilers for Chip Zdarsky's Daredevil, amazing series. Highly recommend you go read it if you haven't yet. But in one of the most recent issues, Daredevil goes to hell to fight a giant devil demon thing. if that was in a regular novel and not in a comic, I wouldn't be able to figure out what that would look like. But they did it so well that it created this environment and immersion into a different story than I could tell. So art is always important for immersing yourself in these stories that they want to tell, and allows the creators, writers, and everything to be able to tell the story more efficiently and effectively.
Yeah, there's a couple things that stand out to me in that regard. Is in some ways the art style can help reflect and also set the tone for what the comic's going to be. Like Kingdom Come it immediately puts you in this sort of timeless golden age feel, right from the get-go. And then there's other comics, like I can't remember which one it is off the top of my head. You've pointed it out. I think it was maybe Arkham Asylum or something to that effect.
Oh yeah,
it was a horror comic in a way, but following like
great
the
comic
Arkham stuff
from Grant Morrison.
The art style is wild. It's
difficult to read.
It is difficult to read, but it sets you in this unease right from the get go.
It's like you take a watercolor painting
and run it under the
faucet for a little while, and every panel and page is like that. It's
there's
all
just
washed out and
shapes
just like kind of smudges everywhere, and it's really weird, but it puts you at this like, this isn't how a comic is supposed to look like, and it does put you in that sense.
But one other thing about what art can do for a comic is, for me, when I remember something, especially a story, is I remember a visual associated with whatever the thing is that happens in the story that's memorable. And with a book, you have to kind of form your mental picture, and that may not be quite as strong unless it's really, really well described in the novel. With things like Kingdom Come, there's a few panels that I can remember, and I remember what's happening around the story, and it really helps you. It helps cement that part of the story in your memory, at least for me, with a visual tied to the story point.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting if you know a little bit of Alex Ross's background and his career path, before he really cemented himself as a comic book artist, he was someone who drew storyboards for ad agencies, for advertising, right? So if and for somebody that works in the advertising space now, I understand this a little bit more than I used to. But when you're creating a campaign or whatever you're creating, now we do it digitally, but back then it would have been, they would draw mock-ups, kind of like concept art in Star Wars. It's the storyboards that you'd see in like the behind the scenes, where they've got like an illustration of different shots in the scene. Right. And so he did that. And I think that's an important connection to what you're talking about, Nate, because Alex Ross had to learn how to tell a story in visually that communicated something very, very clear. Right. And when it comes to marketing and branding and advertising, it has to work. It has to tell you that story, or it doesn't get that story across. It's not, you can't just blame it on its art and it's subjective. When it comes to advertising, it has to be right.
And it has to be quick with it
and
too.
So you have to be able to get a message across very, very quickly. And so, that's where he kind of got his start career-wise. And then moved in and started writing some comics, and really became cemented as a comic book artist with the Marvels, which was a very similar art style from what I've seen as Kingdom Come.
All of Alex Ross is pretty much like that.
With that, and that's kind of what moved him into that. We've talked a little bit about that series before on this show. What are some of the other things that Alex Ross is kind of known for when it comes to the comic book world? Some of the other projects that he's worked on.
I mean, he's done which I still have to read this, and I do want to, Justice, which was a 12-issue kind of mini-series in DC, where he teamed up with Jim Kruger and Doug Braithwaite, and it really revisits kind of superheroes of the Justice League and their battles against superheroes and villains and all this stuff, and it's a great telling of just how to deal with that. I know that Lex Luthor and Superman have a really great clash in that series as well, and I do really want to read that because it's Alex Ross, and I know that it would be an amazing series with his writing, but it's a long running series from 2005 to 2007. So yeah, 12 issues for a miniseries is pretty.
So that must have been a bi-monthly.
It was. But that's long.
Type series on that. I also know that he did Shadows of the Empire in the 90s, which is a big Star Wars comic book.
Yeah, he did
series,
the cover art, I think.
With that, so yeah, it's was really good. And just here's a little side note: if you aren't following, if you're on X, the platform formerly known as Twitter, with that, and you're not following Alex Ross, and I'm sure he's the same on Instagram. I just never on there. With that,
I follow him on Facebook too.
Yeah, on Facebook and stuff. You need to, because he's constantly posting art and different things that he's done,
so amazing.
And it's just every time. It's funny. I'll be scrolling, doing that doom scrolling through my feed, and one of his images will come up, and I'm like, that's Alex Ross. And I mean, you'll know as soon as you see it that it's Alex Ross, and it always evokes emotion whenever you see it. With it, and it's funny. I'll see Superman, and the first thing I look for is if it's a yellow background, a shield, or if it's a black background shield, because then I want to know what it's from. Is it from Kingdom Come? With that.
Yeah, he also did the Timeless collection for Marvel, which who other would you get to do art for Marvel in a Timeless collection? But it's portraits of each superhero in Marvel in kind of just a headshot format. And I mean, it's even big enough for Disney to make a shirt out of it, which I have that shirt, but
that's where those come from. Okay.
It is, and it was covers, and he still does those covers every now and then for specific series. He had a line of them last year for villains and stuff throughout every single series. He had a variant cover.
I have the Mandarin one for one of the Iron Man comics.
Amazing. Yeah, it's that's awesome. It's crazy.
That's good. Let's talk a little bit more about his style and how it's seen within Kingdom Come. Obviously, his style is pretty signature across the board when it comes to all of his different things that he's done. But what are some of the things that stand out to you from his different, the way that he draws his art with that? I would say that for me, one of the first things that I notice is how realistic. I know we talked a little bit about that. We talked about the kind of photorealistic portrayals on that. It gives these characters a lot more of a lifelike photographic appearance. It reminds me, as soon as I see Alex Ross art, and I know that he probably gets somewhat tired, although I know that he was recognized by the museum for it, but somewhat tired of this comparison. But it always reminds me of Norman Rockwell. And if you, I don't know, do you guys even know what Norman Rockwell art is?
No, but I know what Google is.
Well, when you look at Norman Rockwell was an artist in the early half of the 20th century that drew iconic covers for the Saturday Evening Post, which was a weekly magazine.
I can see the
when
comparison.
you see his and he's infamous for these covers, right? And you'll see images. You guys have seen tons of images of Norman Rockwell that you don't realize.
Oh, that one.
Yeah, Sam is right now looking at the famous Thanksgiving dinner,
which I think Ross did a cover or superhero version of that cover.
Exactly. Yeah. So it always reminds me of Norman Rockwell, which it brings you in the DC Kingdom Come idea. It goes back to what you were talking about, Sam.
Sets you in this
pulls you back into a golden age.
Yeah. And I didn't even realize that it would be doing that, because it's similar to art from that time period.
So it's very traditional in the way that he does things. It's very realistic. And then when you see conflict, you see battles, you see struggles, it makes it seem so much more real.
Right. It's almost like watching a live action sequence in an action movie or a superhero movie.
Yeah.
That's why it feels like it could translate to a movie or a TV show so well, because it looks like it's already in that.
Yeah, absolutely. What are some of the other things that you guys notice about the way he does his art?
One thing that, like, personally, I really appreciate about his art is he demonstrates a really amazing knowledge and understanding of the way light and shadowing and things work in his art. The thing that really draws me to a lot of his Iron Man art, he's done a lot of covers for some of the series, and all of his art is amazing, is he is able to paint the armor in such a way that it looks like there's no doubt that it is metallic. It's very reflective. It's just really striking. And he uses that in Kingdom Come in a way that he'll juxtapose these dark moments in a like a battle or something where literally the scene is dark, and then there's this beam of light almost that radiates like hope in a literal sense. So he'll use lighting in a way to not only provide a more detailed and interesting look for a character, like with Batman's armor and Magog and his armor, like
Wonder Woman's armor.
Wonder Woman's armor. They're very striking, but he'll also use it as a narrative tool in a lot of ways, just because he understands the effect that light can have on.
Going back to what you were talking about, Nate, telling a story through the images.
Right.
It. What are some things that you notice about his art, Nate?
Yeah, one of the main things is how well he can portray emotion through the art, and it is insanely captivating. There's one specific moment that I remember from Kingdom Come, and
I wonder
it's
if you're
towards the
thinking
end
of the one I'm thinking of.
I'm sure I am, because every time it gets me. It's he's at the UN after.
Oh no, but
no,
close.
Okay. He's at the UN after all the superheroes, most of the superheroes are eliminated by the nuke, and Shazam's dead, and all of this stuff, and he's losing his mind. And the pastor
who's losing his mind? Superman,
yes. And he starts to break.
Oh yeah, he's getting ready. Yeah,
and the pastor stops him and is talking to him about hope and how he needs to learn. Not this isn't the way and everything. And it focuses on Superman's face for almost a whole page, just his eyes, and kind of goes panel by panel. Each time you see just tears welling up. Panel by panel, and then a tear rolls down the face, and it looks like an animation. If like you
like a flip
through it, you would be able to
yeah.
see it happening in real time, and it's just absolutely captivating every time. And even to the beginning of the comic, when the pastor is talking to his friend on his deathbed, and his friend is losing his mind and everything, the pastor, you could tell, is just mortified, heartbroken, and everything by how he thinks this friend has lost his mind, and he doesn't know how to help him. And every character just has emotion that you can tell, which sometimes you really can't get that from comics as well. But his art style always lends itself to that.
What was your idea?
Yeah, the panel that sticks out to me for very different reasons is it's just before Superman goes to the UN. There's the smoke all around him. He's standing there, and then he looks up, and you see his eyes glowing because he's just so angry. It's such a striking moment, because you don't see Superman angry like that very often, and it's just sort of this reserved rage that you can just see like in one panel before he flies off to the UN. And that one panel, that one image always kind of stuck with me, also just because it's a really cool picture. But yeah, that was a really cool panel.
Well, that kind of goes back to the reality that he draws in his and paints his scenes and his characters in a way that's designed to grab your emotion, right? It's designed to grab your heart and bring you in with it, versus what was such a central way of doing it at that time, which was these crazy big, over the top things versus the realistic, portrayals.
I think what it kind of is the art at the time was trying to make characters larger than life by literally making them larger than life or over exaggerated, while Alex Ross took characters
and takes
literally
characters still and takes characters still today, right?
Yeah. He takes these characters and he almost does the exact opposite. He takes them back, makes them more realistic, but still makes them a hero you can look up to, almost in a way that you would look up to. The only thing I can think of is maybe like a statue of a soldier from like a war that sacrificed himself, right? You look up at this image of a normal man, right, who gave his life to save your country, and there's just this sort of reverence. I'm not saying that Superman and them should be held to the same esteem, but it's that kind of feel that it's a normal person, but you have this reverence for them even though they don't look like, I don't know how Batman was portrayed in some stories in like Nightfall and things like that, right? It's bringing it to its simplistic form that really kind of helps you connect to these characters.
So let's talk a little bit about his impact on comic books and his legacy on that. What are some things that you think of that are like the way he changed the comic book genre, specifically with Marvel's and DC's Kingdom Come, and how it's impacted things after that?
Yeah, he's impacted a lot of artists nowadays of what they do. To name a few, Clayton Crane, his work is more stylized and darker, but it also has a sense of realism to it. And another one that comes to mind and always comes to mind is one of my favorite artists.
I think I know where you're going with this.
And definitely takes from the realism that happens is Libraimejo.
Yeah.
Absolutely an amazing artist, and does some of the best art I've ever seen in a comic. And
he's done a lot of Batman stuff.
He
right?
has done a lot of Batman stuff, and
I've seen it.
Every single one of his pieces of covers or variants or actual series or anything like that is always insanely realistic, and it definitely takes from Alex Ross.
It feels like he goes more realistic than Alex Ross. Alex Ross still has that kind of stylized, trying to go with that older feel. I forget the artist that you compared him to, but it still kind of feels
Norman
like he's
Rockwell.
He still feels like he's kind of pulling from that, while Libraimejo takes a much more modern approach to that realistic style.
Yeah. Obviously, someone that has been this impactful when it comes to the comic book genre has also influenced things outside of this. I mean, he's done album covers. He did a cover for an Anthrax heavy metal album.
That's awesome.
He does poster art. He did the Incredibles classic posters from the original
I'll have to look at
movie.
See, I looked that up. I couldn't seem to find one. Maybe I was looking in the wrong spot, though.
Yeah.
But I can see how he would lend himself to
Definitely.
that style very well.
Well, yeah. I mean, if you think about the way that The Incredibles kind of portrays the classic superhero era.
It's very similar to the way he does it.
It compares to that, which I mean, he does magazine covers and everything else. A lot of stuff. Here's kind of the final question before we kind of start to wrap up the episode. My question would be, I'll start with you, Sam, and then I'll let Nathan answer it. Go back. It's 1996. DC's Kingdom Come is getting ready to come out, and it's a different artist than Alex Ross. Does this series have the impact and the longevity? Does the story carry itself without Alex Ross's art?
I mean, it's almost impossible to say, but yeah, hindsight 2020. But I mean, it would have a very, very different feel. I mean, his art tells the story just as much as the narrative and text bubbles do. I mean, there's things like where, I can't remember exactly what it is, but like there's an eagle clashing with, I don't remember what the other, there's maybe a phoenix, I think. That really just like tells you that this is a impactful mythological moment in this story. This is one of those end time visions that we're seeing taking place. And I'm not saying that couldn't be done by other artists, but the kind of, for lack of a better term, flat coloring and art that was prevalent at the time wouldn't convey the heaviness to the story. I mean, this is a impactful, heavy story, and that depth and realism to the art just helps sell that point even further.
Yeah. Nate, what do you think? DC's Kingdom Come, does it work, and does it have the impact that it had, or it has and continues to have, with a different artist?
No, not at all. Because back then comics were dying out at this point. It was difficult for comics to kind of keep going. I mean, you had Watchmen, and that was a big deal, but that was years before this, and they started to die out again. And comic stores were a big thing at this point. They weren't selling them in gas stations or convenience stores really anymore. It was stores now. And what a big thing for comics was cool covers. because that's what grabbed people.
Yeah.
And Alex Ross's cover for each one of these series grabbed people, and that was a big deal for this series. And not only that, it did tell the story correctly. And every time I think about the series, and have for years, I think of this as like Kingdom Come by Alex Ross, not by Mark Waid. Even though Mark Waid did an amazing job, this feels like a kind of an
you
art
just
book.
associate Alex Ross with
yeah,
Kingdom
it's
Come.
almost like an art book, a sketchbook, but with a story,
Right.
an amazing story
An
attached with it.
It's Kingdom Come by Alex Ross is always how I thought of it, because Alex Ross did such an amazing job with this. And even then, I know it's Alex Ross created this story as much as Mark Waid did, from what they were talking about.
Together
and they
on
worked
it a lot.
together a lot, and they had to, because this series, there were so many moments when it was just the art on the page that had to tell the story. And if without that, without Mark Waid helping Alex Ross, and without Alex Ross helping Mark Waid create the script, it wouldn't have been the same. We wouldn't have gotten the same story remotely, I don't think. And I don't think Mark Waid would have really worked on Kingdom Come without Alex Ross. Without Alex Ross, I don't think we would have this series at all.
That's amazing. You know, it'll be fun. I'd be curious to see what Mark Waid has to say about the relationship and how they worked together on this this series, because I can't think. I mean, the Watchmen series you brought up is one of those iconic moments in the history of comic books. There's other iconic moments. You know, I mean, I go back. The death and reign of the Superman is a huge story for me. Obviously, Death in the Family, the Dark Knight, the Dark Knight
Returns,
exactly.
Killing Joke.
Those are all big moments, but I don't know of a more transformative is the right word moment.
It's a big word
in the history of comics.
No, this put the comic industry on a 180 at this point, and really made us understand that superheroes can be more than just an awesome story. And Watchmen helped us. Watchmen paved the way for Kingdom Come to make such an amazing story, because Watchmen told a story that we didn't think would be possible emotionally and impactful as it is in the series.
Yeah.
So.
Well, we're going to continue to talk about DC's Kingdom Come in the next several weeks, and then it'll be a little bit of a pause, and we'll come back when we're
like
able
waiting for the finale of Stranger Things season 4.
That's right.
Yeah.
We'll come back and we'll have our conversation with Mark Waid. So we'll do that. But here's what I'm gonna extend an opportunity for you guys listening to this episode to engage and help us understand how you view Alex Ross, not just as it comes to DC's Kingdom Come, but to all of the comic book art that he's done. We're going to create a new post on our I'm just going to say Twitter, because you guys all know what I'm talking about, on Twitter, and we'll pin it to our profile, where we'd like you guys to go in and reply to it with your favorite Alex Ross comic book image.
Whether cover or anything,
whatever you find with that.
There's so many
ones I could pick.
I would love to look at all of those, and then and if you can and you want to, maybe take a second in in the post as well to tell us in whatever it is, 240 characters or whatever it is less, why that image speaks to you the way that it does, why it's your favorite Alex Ross image. Because I think that if you're a comic book fan, that would be a lot of fun to see what you think, but also to see what other people that love comic books and Alex Ross's art think about it as well. So that'll be a lot of fun. Check that out on our Twitter X feed. With that, that'll be, and maybe we'll do the same thing on. I don't know. You can't reply with images on Instagram, so it doesn't work the same way. So we'll just leave it on Twitter with that. But yeah, that'll do it for this week. Where can people interact other than X? Where can people interact with us?
We're pretty active on Facebook. We're on Instagram. We're on Threads, kind of, I think.
We haven't got a Blue Sky invite yet, so we're not on Blue Sky.
What?
Yeah, it's like another one of
those on Blue Sky.
There's a lot of people on Blue Sky, just not us, because we haven't got an invite yet. If somebody has an invite, you want to send it to us, let me know. So.
But yeah, that's where you can get us. And we have a website too, tatooinesons.com.
Yeah, and you can always email us too. I don't ever talk about that, but you can email us at David or DJesse, DJESSE at tatooinesons.com. Send us your thoughts on the show as well. We'd love to interact that way.
And speaking of thoughts, you can leave reviews and ratings and everything on whatever podcast app allows you. Some do, some don't. But Spotify, you can leave a rating. Apple Podcasts, you can leave a review. And we'd love to see them. Hopefully we'll see them.
Yeah, we do. We get notified.
We get notified, and so we can read them and see your thoughts of how you enjoy the show. So yeah, please do that.
And we really do want to know what you think about the show. So email us or give us ratings, review. Drop us a message on social media. Whichever platform that you're on, we would appreciate that very much. And thank you again. I know that we said it at the beginning. We want to say it again here. Thank you for listening to Tatooine Sons. You know, we get opportunities to interview Mark Wade, and we get to have opportunities to go to different events and to receive screeners to episodes of shows that are coming out and everything else, and it's only because of you, and we know that. And so if you weren't listening to this show, if you weren't sharing this show with your circle of influence on social media and with your friends and your family and stuff, then this show wouldn't really be able to do the things that we do. And so we never forget that. We think about it all the time. I want to thank you guys for your messages. Thank you for sending all those to us. You guys are awesome to us, and we really do appreciate all that you do. Thank you for listening to us. And again, another shout out to all of those people that listen on the day that this podcast comes out every single week on Tuesdays. We appreciate that very, very much. You guys are what really makes this thing extra special for us. So, and then, if you're listening in Tuesday morning, just be ready. We got another one coming right out. Another Ahsoka episode coming out at noon Eastern. It's our review episode. Yeah. After seeing those, no spoilers. We've seen the first 2 episodes, though. We're going to be very careful in our conversation to talk at a very high level without getting into any type of spoilers with it. But we are real quick tease.
Ooh.
If you were to describe the first 2 episodes of Ahsoka in one word, Sam, give me your thoughts before we get out here on this episode.
I don't know.
That's 3.
I'm going to hyphenate it to make it work. Star Wars.
Okay.
Oh, okay. I know why you're saying that. You can hear on the next episode that comes out a little bit later. What about you?
Encouraging.
For sure. I'm going to say cinematic.
That's a good one.
Yeah. With all that, I'm very excited about that. Can't wait for you to check out that episode here in just a few hours. That's pretty much going to do it for this week. But anything else you gentlemen would like to say?
May the Force be with you.
May the Force be with you.
May the Force be with you always.
This party's over.
I like that Wookiee.
Don't get technical with me.